This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's December 19th, 2024. On this day in 1966, the United Nations endorsed the Outer Space Treaty. That's an international agreement that essentially says war and territory grabs are limited to Earth. No weapons of mass destruction in orbit. No claiming sovereignty over the moon or Mars. The countries that signed the agreement also promised support to any astronaut in distress, no matter what nation they're from. And the treaty says a country's space stations and vehicles should be open on a reciprocal basis to representatives of other nations. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The Outer Space Treaty does not apply to the airspace immediately above the planet. The much older rules regarding territory, espionage, and fighting definitely apply in the near-Earth atmosphere. And along with those come a certain degree of trepidation whenever we see something we don't immediately understand in the sky over the places where we live. Yes, I'm talking about drone sightings. I'm sure you've seen the breathless TikToks or YouTube videos featuring shaky camera phone footage, people looking up at something flying overhead and assuming the worst about who's using it to look at them. Websites and social media posts declare it a mystery. In New Jersey, where the drone panic started, researchers at Montclair State University have already done a quick study of reactions to the online trend. It finds that searches for the term drone have increased 1,900% in recent weeks, and nearly half of all posts referring to drones include some expression of fear. It's getting under folks' skin. Or, as one post I saw put it, the drone scare is showing how close we still are to medieval villagers pulling out the pitchforks and cursing giant demons in the sky. Which leads me to a letter that Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn sent this week. She wrote Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, expressing concern that the drones might be foreign surveillance devices. She says the DoD should treat the uptick in drones as a national security breach, and she asks the secretary to send her an explanation of how the military plans to react. But here's the thing. On the very same day that Blackburn sent her letter, the Defense Department, along with the FBI, the FAA, Homeland Security, all of the agencies you'd expect to be on the lookout for potential incursions into American airspace, they released a statement on the drones. It says that federal agencies have been following up on tips from concerned citizens and that over and over again, they've been able to rule out any kind of safety or security risk. The agencies say they've used their advanced technology and sent out trained experts to observe the so-called mystery drones. So it's not that they're brushing things off. The thing people seem to be forgetting is that we've entered an era of lots of drones, for better or worse. And if you want to use a drone to look around, this is a great time of year to do it, because the leaves that might otherwise obscure that view from overhead are off of the trees. Here in Nashville, property assessors use drones in the fall and winter to take a look at the state of structures and see what improvements have been made to lots. There are an increasing number of hobbyist drone operators. Law enforcement uses them, and there are all kinds of commercial uses for drones, too. If you've watched any travel influencers, you've probably seen them post sweeping drone shots out of the places they've been. We should be seeing more drones in the sky because there are just more drones around. And the statement also points out the more that people panic over supposed mystery drones, the more they misidentify what they're seeing. So some of the tips called in turn out to be a helicopter far in the distance, lights from an overhead passenger jet, even stars. Now, that's not to say that foreign surveillance isn't a concern, but not everything new or hard to explain is China peeking in on what we're doing. And here in Tennessee, we've seen the dark side of what can happen when fear starts making us imagine spies at every turn. During the first Trump administration, the FBI's so-called China initiative was used to wrongly label UT professor An Ming Hu as a spy. This is a man who made a life for himself in our state. He worked here, had a wife and kids here. His son was a UT student. NASA reached out to him because the space agency was interested in his expertise in nanotechnology. There was no evidence suggesting he stole any secrets from NASA, just fear. based on the fact that he's Chinese and continues to lecture at his alma mater in Beijing. Who lost his job? He was put on house arrest. His family had to move to Canada, all for something he did not do. Yes, he was ultimately acquitted of the bogus charges. But that paranoia behind his arrest and trial still upended the lives and sense of well-being for his entire family. In just a few minutes, redefining Christmas traditions after leaving the church. That's coming up after the newscast.
Tennessee's legislature has passed a record-breaking number of anti-LGBTQ laws. I'm Mariana Baca-Yao, and as WPLN's Power and Equity reporter, I focus not only on how marginalized communities contend with those new laws, but how they come together in spite of them.
I think what gives me hope is that someone like you is covering this. Because if the overwhelming narrative is one of defeat, how can we have hope?
Listen here on 90.3 WPLN News.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Nashville's Metro Council issued decisions this week on items that were previously punted. That includes allowing country music star Morgan Wallen to construct a 20-foot sign outside his Broadway bar. 6 months ago, the council rejected his application for a permit, citing his usage of racial slurs and arrest for throwing a chair off the side of a downtown building. But when the request reappeared before the council this week, it was approved without discussion. The body also approved a resolution intended to restrict participation in hate groups. The legislation put forth by council member Jeff Prepty has appeared before the body numerous times in recent months. The initial bill would have banned Metro police from associating with criminal hate groups or paramilitary gangs, but that was amended to become a non-binding resolution that asks Metro to review its personnel policies regarding hate groups and recommend changes. Mayor Freddie O'Connell has named 5 people to the board that will oversee the East Bank development. The appointees include Emily Lamb, Brian Reams, Caitlin Destu, Mona Hodge, and Cal Cato. Lamb, who's a development attorney, will serve as board chair. The East Bank Development Authority was created earlier this year. It required approval from both the Tennessee State Legislature and Nashville's Metro Council. The body consists of 9 members, the 5 selected yesterday by the mayor, plus 2 that were appointed last month by Metro Council. The final 2 members will be decided by the state. Nearly 4 years after 2nd Avenue was bombed, the rebuilding process has hit another milestone. The South Block will reopen this Friday, ahead of schedule after nearly a year of construction. The downtown street was heavily damaged after the blast on Christmas Day 2020. What followed was an extensive rebuilding to make the area more pedestrian-friendly. However, this meant closing off the block to vehicles. The southern portion is the second of 3 blocks requiring reconstruction. The north portion was completed in June. Now it's just the middle area that remains. That's the block most impacted by the blast. Preliminary infrastructure work is already underway, but construction won't occur until 2025, and that's expected to take about a year. Nashville is deepening its country music connections with Australia. It's a bond the music and tourism industries have been fostering, and it now includes an annual festival in the Australian town of Tamworth. Tamworth and Nashville have been sister cities for more than a decade. The next ambassador, so to speak, is up-and-coming singer-songwriter Sam Hatmaker. She's been chosen to represent Nashville at the Tamworth Festival next month.
I almost moved up north, running from what I'm just not sure. This town must be on fire, everybody's burning out.
She'll perform and participate in a music exchange. Tamworth is one of Nashville's 10 sister cities. Relationships are fostered by a local nonprofit that hosts cultural and business exchanges. Middle Tennessee State University is reporting record growth in its online program. More than half of students are enrolled in at least one online course, and 14% of the student body takes all of their classes that way. Altogether, almost a third of the credit hours earned this fall came from online courses. Looking forward, administrators say they're looking at ways to round out the online experience by extending student services like cultural events into that sphere. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Christmas can be a hard time for people estranged from their family. It can be an even harder time if you're estranged from your faith. As a growing number of women leave the church, the season of joy may not feel all that joyful. Some Nashvillians who have left are starting their own holiday traditions. WPLN's Mariana Bacchiao reports.
Christmas time can be lonely for people who have left the church. But Nashville singer-songwriter Heather May doesn't feel alone. Early on a Sunday morning, her home is filled with the smell of breakfast staples as she and her partner prepare to feed 40 of their closest friends.
Babe, did you do all of the pancakes already?
Yep. They're in there, won't we?
I forgot to put the rainbow sprinkles in. Darn it.
May isn't dressed in her Sunday best yet. Her version of that is a gown of large mother-of-pearl sequins that one guest will compare to the children's book, The Rainbow Fish. But for the moment, her partner, Chris Matthews, is decked out in Christmas colors. Her ensemble is complete with red-framed glasses.
I'm a butch lesbian. Like, we put on chapstick and, like, that's the end of our makeup. But, like, glasses and my bow ties, I'm very, very into.
Matthews and May both grew up in the church. Matthews was a pastor's kid, and May was in the worship band.
That was my favorite part. I mean, that's what I wanted to do, was potentially go be, a worship leader.
Every Christmas, May's church would light candles in the dark and sing Silent Night. For nearly a decade after she left the church, May couldn't bring herself to sing any of the religious carols.
The first time I sang Silent Night was during the pandemic, and it might seem like nothing to anybody else, but to me, it was like quite a moment.
May had associated those Christmas classics with the time she returned to church after realizing she was queer. The United Methodist Church she went back to made it clear she wasn't welcome. Since then, UMC has had a split over LGBTQ issues. This year, UMC made history as the first denomination to allow queer folks to serve in the clergy.
If I had grown up in a church that was LGBTQ affirming, it's like a two-part answer. Yes, I probably would have stayed. But what's unfortunate is that I'm also a woman. And so I probably would have stayed. And then later in life, realized all of the other.
But more and more women, both queer and straight, are leaving the church. According to the Survey Center on American Life, that's especially true of Gen Z. One of the hardest parts about leaving, May says, is giving up the sense of community.
You go from like having like Bible study, which is where your friends hang out on Wednesdays. You have weekend retreats. You have your Bible study with your girlfriends. You have your Bible study with your like early 20s. You have there are so many things that are socially available to you, right?
May has been able to find community in other LGBTQ musicians here in Nashville, including her partner. Together, they hold these Sunday morning brunches to take the space that church once filled.
This is the good part of church. Gathering around, telling people you love each other, looking in their eyes and saying, I love all that you are. I think you are made perfectly.
When the guests arrive, May's partner Matthews feels the love with the delivery of Bojangles biscuits.
I love you. We brought biscuits. So
My partner should be so happy. Chris Matthews.
And with a house full of people, May hardly notices if a Christmas carol comes on in the background. Mariana Bacchiao, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. Yesterday's was written by Catherine Sweeney, and she shared a nugget of information that didn't make it into the final edit of her story about the community response to opioid treatment clinics. The newsletter is a great way to get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at wpln.org/NashVillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one. And we'll catch back up tomorrow.